So welcome, Rich Hoyt from the Hard Compound. Thank you very much for joining me today. A little bit of a different video on the channel discussing what's been a very interesting few months leading up to the 2024 season, in particular the BTCC. But first of all, very busy at the minute for you, I'm sure. But how's it all going?
Firstly, Louis, thank you for having me on. Always nice to come and have a chat with you, sir. Very grateful to have been asked to come on. Thank you. And as you say, yes, very busy on the Hard Compound. Lots going on, lots of motorsport stuff and interviews and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's all going okay. So I can't complain.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick one to anyone watching: go give Rich and the Hard Compound a follow across all social medias to keep updated with all your motorsport news. And there's been a lot of that recently. It has been a very crazy time, not just in touring cars, with Formula One and some guy called Lewis joining Ferrari in a couple of years. And there's all sorts. It's been, through an off season, it's been crazy, hasn't it?
It's been crazy, yeah, as you say. And, some big news all over the spectrum, I suppose, of motorsport. And for those people who do run pages, it certainly gets the fingers going a bit faster with trying to keep up to date with things. But very interesting times.
Yeah, very much so. It's always an interesting one with the off season in touring cars. There's been lots of driver moves, people changing teams, which we always get in touring cars. It's often a bit of a merry-go-round in the off season. And there's been a lot of drivers actually announcing they won't be returning to the series this year, which has sent a lot of fans into a bit of a frenzy, quite worried at times. So what have you made so far of some of these decisions, and can you sort of help explain to a more casual fan why some of these drivers are making these decisions?
Obviously, we don't have all the answers and all the reasoning. I just want to put it out there, and nothing that's going to get said here is absolutely gospel or fact. Just want to get that absolutely clear. It's just an opinion, really. For those who don't know, the BTCC, obviously, it's the top touring car series in the UK here, but it doesn't offer any prize money or anything like that. But with the new hybrid systems and things like that, and just the cost of the world these days, the costs are going up to run teams, and motorsport isn't the ally of the green community, which I think is another reason for that. But with regards to the BTCC, I said there's no prize money involved. The costs are going up, and I just think that they've been creeping up for a while. And the drivers that haven't got the big backers, whether it be personal or family, or with backers, big companies such as Napa, and we've got like Bristol Street Motors. They're very well established. We've got the Speedworks with the Toyota factory under the Toyota Gazoo Racing banner. These are all teams that can function and will offer a seat for X amount of money. And those drivers that have the backing can get in. Others that need to find a larger number of smaller sponsors, perhaps guys such as like Dan Lloyd, they are struggling because the costs are going up, basically. And it's hard to find sponsors who want to invest money into a series that doesn't have the prize money and isn't on a mainstream TV channel, which I think would be a huge help. It's on ITV4 and they do terrific work, as we know, but ITV1 would be better because it's a bigger audience, but for that you have to have the product. So it's a catch-22 situation. Unfortunately, I think this has been coming for a while with costs going up, as I say. And I just think that drivers aren't willing to risk investing so much in it themselves and for their sponsors. And I think it might be time to look at a cheaper alternative, which I think might be a reason why guys like Dan Lloyd and Jack Butel have gone to Porsches, for example. Dexter Patterson has gone to the European GT3 Championship. And there's a few others as well. And I just think costs are going up and people don't really want to risk things at the moment.
Yeah, very, very much so. You mentioned obviously drivers going over to different categories, and it is really crazy when you compare the likes of the Porsche Carrera Cup, which is single make category, but an amazing series all round, amazing machines they get to drive. And that kind of series is a lot more cost effective and cheaper for drivers, but they're still driving amazing cars at the same time and being competitive, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think as a racing driver, you want to be competitive. No disrespect to any teams that are on the grid or have recently left the grid in the BTCC, but some teams, as is the nature of the world, we can't all be running at the front of things and we can't all be competitive. And I think the costs to go into the BTCC to, despite everyone's best efforts, run around in the midfield. It almost doesn't make sense, whereas someone can maybe use or have to bring half the budget to go and race a Porsche, which is a faster car. If you remember, I think Dan Camish said that it's a faster car. It still elbows out racing, and as it's a one make series, it's more spec, as it were, and as you say, it leads to some close racing and everyone being that little bit more competitive. So it feels like a win-win.
Yeah, very much so. And I'm always one that follows the support categories, as I'm sure you know. And I'm very excited for the Porsches this year. We've got some great drivers turning up and racing this year. But it's not just the touring cars. This whole sort of thing at the minute is having an impact on. It is some of the other support categories. With a big example being the minis at the minute, with Graves recently pulling out their operation in the JCW Championship. Recently, just an hour before this is being filmed, Hybrid Tune were announcing they were doing the same, which is a real shame. But yeah, what fans have got to understand, especially with the Graves situation, is the fact that they've got to do what works for them. So they're still running cars in the Coopers, which is a bit more cost effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think certainly at the level at which they're operating, obviously this is not F1 or NASCAR levels of investment and money. It's very much in some cases a hand-to-mouth existence. And just taking Graves as an example, I think it's a very wise move for them to step away from the JCW just for the time being, because of the business implications and the costs and the outgoings versus the rewards, things like that. They run a number of cars in a number of series, and I think they may have been in danger of just spreading themselves a bit too thin, perhaps the way Team Hard did. And maybe they had one eye on that, just seeing what happened with costs going up, a lot going on. And as you say, I think it's the right move. They're still going to be active in other series, in the minis and other series like that. So they're a well-run outfit. There's some good people there, and I've met a great number of them. So they'll be fine. It's a very sensible business move, I think. And I think the same with Hybrid Tune. Apparently that's been bubbling away for a while. They've been thinking about possibly stepping back, and obviously they've announced it, as you said, just before we came on here. So I think they're having to look at the business side. I mean, everyone goes racing because they love it, but sometimes you can't do what you love to do if the pockets aren't deep enough. Sensible move all round.
Yeah, very much so. And I think we are very lucky here in the UK, because we've got plenty of motorsport categories from grassroots club level right up to the likes of your British touring cars, your British GT even.
Jump in if I may. I mean, as you say, the TCR UK, firstly, there's no need to compare the two because they're completely different. I've always said that it's like comparing a lasagna to a cheesecake. Yeah, it's essentially food, but they're completely different. But there will be the inevitable comparisons, obviously. But as you say, TCR, basically, they are more closely linked, I guess, to the road going cars that we know all about and we see every day. Excuse me, because it's basically stripped back to the shell and off you go. Whereas the BTCC, there's a space age front end and all different kinds of things that go on. But yes, obviously TCR UK is part of a much wider TCR community. There's TCR Europe, TCR Asia. There's a WTCR until recently, which is now the Touring Car World Tour, or whatever it's badged as now. TCR Australia, Tom Oliphant, etc. So it's like an arm of a spider. So and it all feeds back into the main TCR hub. As you say, it's more cost effective for manufacturers, which is why we see Volkswagen have come back into TCR recently in the last few days. We've got Lynk & Co, which is huge. They've come into TCR UK, multiple champions across the TCR web. And yeah, there's prize money. TCR UK, they get free oil this year, which is a big help. That's another, just little things like that, big expenditure, which is saved. They're getting free oil in TCR UK this year. And I just think that the cost effectiveness, there's not so much messing around with a car needed. I say messing around loosely. BTCC don't mess around with things, obviously. And again, it comes back to the finances of things. Without money, no one can go racing. You'd be surprised at what F1 drivers have to bring to a team versus how much they take out. It's more disproportionate than you would think, and that boils right back down to the very basic levels of running a touring car team in a domestic series. So yeah, the prize money, it's more cost effective. It's like cheaper to run. The manufacturers are getting involved. We're getting, and I think it's only a matter of time before we see. Maybe not direct migration from the BTCC to the TCR UK of drivers, but I think it might go that way if the way of the world continues, because there's the line saying TCR UK is the future, which is causing a lot of raised eyebrows and shaking heads and nodded heads and lots of disagreement. I don't think it needs to be the future. I think it's certainly the best thing for the present, just because drivers are finding it hard to raise money. And if a TV channel hops on board with TCR UK, it could absolutely fly. So I can see the appeal, and I can see why people have still got their feet very much firmly in the BTCC camp, because it's been so strong for so many years. But at the moment, the scales are just leveling off. And I'll put it this way: if I had some money to go racing, and I didn't want to take too much of a risk, I know which series I'd be heading to.
Yeah, very much so. I think it's great to have that alternative. Like you said, it's great that you've got those TCR cars racing all over the world. So say you were doing a whole campaign in the UK, you could also race abroad, as you were saying. And obviously it is cost effective, obviously with it being a bit cheaper to run, and obviously the addition of prize money, which is a huge thing. But as you mentioned at the end there, British touring cars has been massive for such a long time. There will always be an audience for it, but B, drivers that want to get to that level, because that's what they've aspired to for such a long time, no matter how much it costs, because I think it's a dream for so many drivers, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And excuse me, again, not to plug my own page, but I had it was the week after Ronan Pearson had said that he was going to join Accelerate Motorsport for the 2023 season. And I always ask people, especially the younger racers, what their aim is. Is there something that they'd like to do, whether it be what I want to go and race Le Mans, or I want to go or whatever it might be. Ronan said that he wants to be like Jason Plato. He wants to get into the BTCC, be there for 25 years, win loads of races, championships, and be a legend. And that just shows the draw that the BTCC has. And I'm sure there's others who might be thinking that, but won't be vocalizing it. So fair play to Ronan for saying it. And that is as I say, that is a measure of the draw of the BTCC. I think the only other national touring car series that could have that pull would be the Australian supercars. And we've all seen drivers have gone from there and gone on to do other things. So yeah, the BTCC will always be the BTCC. It'll always have that pull. I just hope things level off, and so more people can get into it and get racing and try and be the next Jason Plato.
Yeah, very much so. And on the same line as the drivers, there's always going to be a big following from touring car fans, even if they are moaning about the category over on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. But because, you know, you look back in the championship's history, and there's been obviously some amazing seasons, but there's also been some in between stages, really, isn't there? You know, 2001 comes to mind with the really small grids and the kind of in between teething phase, going from the BTC regs to the NGTC regulations. So there's always going to be those strange kind of in between times where the championship is sort of developing, isn't it? Which is always going to have its difficulties, but BTCC fans are very loyal, aren't they?
Yeah, and they'll follow it whatever happens, and that goes, you know, and there's so many series that are like that have had these peaks and troughs, whether it be due to how they're run. Mine goes to the IndyCar split of the mid '90s. That was just a mess, and that hasn't happened in the BTCC, which is great. It's always been on a path, and it's normally been governed by the situation in the country itself, rather than anything from within motorsport or within the series, like back to 07 and 08 with the credit crunch and all that kind of thing. There was a bit of a dip there as well. So hopefully the BTCC can ride this out, this current financial situation that we all find ourselves in. Just as it's done in the past, as you say, and I don't know if it's social media that's magnifying it. People are a lot more aware of things, or if it is a bit more serious this time and it's going to take a bigger bounce back. But as you say, the fans are loyal. The drivers that are in it historically generally want to stay in it. So hopefully we'll start seeing drivers coming back in through the door very soon, because we've got a few staying, changing teams, and we've got a few leaving. So hopefully we can have some coming in the door as well very soon.
Yeah, very much so. Do you think the fact that it's obviously, and I think everyone would agree, it's amazing that we've got these huge manufacturers in the championship, the likes of BMW, who have been a staple for the last however long, obviously with West Surrey Racing, Accelerate over the last few years have just gone forward and forward, getting bigger and bigger, starting off, you know, it's crazy to think in 2019 they joined with the two really old MGs by that point and scored a couple of points through the whole season, and now they're this massive manufacturer operation, and I don't really need to go into Napa racing at the minute, do I? But do you think these massive teams are hurting the championship in the sense that it's near impossible for smaller independent teams to come and race in the championship at the minute, which we might have seen a bit more sort of in the 2010s?
It's a really tricky one, because I forget which year it was 2017 or 18. We had multiple different winners, didn't we? We had like 14 different winners, or 17 winners, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that just showed how level it was. It's a tricky one, because in all motorsport and in the BTCC, there is a risk of things going stale and getting, I don't want to use the word boring, but it does get banded around a lot, when the same driver / team is or are winning every race. I mean, I think it was Thruxton last year, sorry, took a bit of flack because everyone said, well, the Napa cars got out the front and drove into the distance. Mm-hmm. And so I can see why that is seen as a negative, of course. However, for those inside the ropes, you know, Napa have come in, they've invested. Just as like BMW have come in and they've got fully invested with West Surrey Racing and Accelerate, as you say. They've come in and they've invested and they've worked hard, and they've invested money in it, which is a risk in itself. And if someone comes in with financial backing, with expertise, and with the opportunity to develop a car and make it the best it can be and get the best drivers in it, that is surely a good thing, because it's raising the bar, which is what all competitive sport is about. You raise the bar and you try and achieve it, and you try and better it, and it's the challenge. So I can see why it can be these larger teams can be damaging for a series in terms of the fan enjoyment, looking from the outside in, thinking, well, these three big teams are just going to walk away with it every race weekend. But then you think, well, we need these big names, these big backers to raise the profile of the series. So it's very tricky. I mean, it goes back to the old thing. I mean, I spoke with Dick Bennett before, and he said that he doesn't like things like ballast and reverse grid because he says, well, we've spent time and money making the car the best it can be. We've won 2 races, and now someone pulls a ping pong ball out of a hat, and we've got to start 10th. And he says, there's 2 different ways to look at it. I mean, from the fans' point of view, I can definitely see why they would feel that it's being ruined by the playing field not being so level, being a bit top heavy financially and with resources from some teams. But I can see it from the inside as well, saying, well, you know, basically, if I came into money, I wouldn't want, you know, I would do the best I could with it, whether it be in motorsport or in my own life. And I think if teams have got some money and some backing, then good luck to them. It's just the way it works across sport. We see it in football. You know, there's certain teams going off and winning everything at the moment because they have the backing, and it raises the profile of the competition in which they are competing. But then it's not so much fun for everyone else. So it's a catch-22, and it depends on your mood, I guess, each day.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Well, just going along from that, and just to sort of round off this interview on a positive note, you've got to respect the hard work from Napa Racing and Ash Sutton because, you know, no matter what happens this year, they did fantastic last season, and you know, I completely see why some fans thought some races were boring, myself included at points. But you've got to then, you know, you'll always remember this like last season because of how well Ash Sutton did, and it's amazing to see, isn't it?
It is, and what they've done is absolutely astonishing because I think there were some facts and figures were semi-published about cars going through speed traps in a full race spec, and at no point I don't think were any of the Napa cars the fastest car on the track. And they've just obviously invested in it. They've got the cars set up absolutely superbly, and I spoke with one of their drivers at the Autosport show. I shan't name who it is, and he just said that the big difference is they were able to go testing. The time they could get out on a track, whether it be a test track or whether it be one of the circuits that are used in the British Touring Car Championship, it makes a huge difference. And that's where the gains can be made, and that's where the input from people's pockets and people's brains can really pay off. But yeah, as you said in the question, the 2023 season, we will always remember it for that year where that team were that good. And there was, I think, one drive at Silverstone by Ash Sutton that we're all going to remember for a long time. I was lucky enough to be there for it. And I felt sorry for Tom Ingram because he put in a terrific drive that day as well. And any other season, that would have been the standout drive. But it wasn't even the standout drive in the race, which is astonishing. But yeah, they did a terrific job. And Ash, obviously, head and shoulders above the rest at the moment, I think.
Yeah, very much so. It's interesting you say that about the whole testing thing, because I interviewed Paul ONeal at the end of last season and did a season review, and that's exactly what he said. He said, you know, the season is often won in the winter months and not just on a Sunday afternoon like a lot of us see on at home on the TV, you know. So there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and there's, you know, it's a very busy time of year at the minute, as we've seen with lots of announcements. And as I said, we've got lots to look forward to. It'll be interesting to see what those big teams come out with, what package they bring to the grid at Donington in a couple of months' time. But we've got plenty to look forward to, and great to see a real, you know, nice mix of good news as well. The likes of Restart Racing joining the grid, Chris Smiley returning, Scott Sutton joining the grid, as well as Speedworks really looking like they're going to have a strong lineup this year, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a bit of doom and gloom around the series, but let's look at the highlights, as you say. I mean, excuse me. To start with Speedworks, we've got, you know, the Toyota Gazoo Racing side of the garage had 3 cars under that umbrella last year. Now they've got just the 2, which I think is going to make a huge difference with Andrew Watson and the as yet an announced driver. I think they are really. I think the TGR side are really going to throw a lot at it, and yeah, with Aidan and Josh coming in the LKQ auto parts with Synetics side of the garage. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It's a long, yeah.
Yeah, we'll just call it LKQ, shall we? I think a lot of people might have their minds set on what happened with the Hondas last year with the other team. They're going to surprise some people. I think in the right car, those two are absolutely title contenders. Aidan Moffat has shown what he can do in the right machinery, and he just hasn't had it. And I think this year is a big year for Aidan Moffat. I think he could very, very easily, mount a charge, certainly for regular podium finishes. So yeah, definitely one to look out for. Restart Racing, I'm chuffed a bit for Bert and for Ben Taylor, because obviously Bert had a stroke, unfortunately, 2 or 3 years ago, but he's back to full strength. He's done well in TCR with Chris and with Scott, and to see them back, they've picked up an ex-Team Hard Cupra, and yeah, I think they are going to surprise a lot of people. I'm a big fan of Scott, I must admit. I've spoken to him at length a number of times. So yeah, he's going to be one to look out for, I think, in the Jack Sears Trophy, which is great to see. You know, we've got some new blood on the grid, some new teams, and yeah, let's go, bring it on.
Yeah, very much so. Yes, it was great to see that Scott was announced, because he's lovely. I've interviewed him a couple of times, and just really passionate about his racing, isn't he? And that, you know, that's what it should be about at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to do something because you love it, and there's no doubting that everyone, certainly at Restart Racing and across the grid, you know, they do it because they love it. You know, and just on Scott, very quickly, it shows the draw of the BTCC, because he had previously announced he was going to go to TCR Europe with Restart Racing, and then the opportunity came up with, you know, with the sad loss of Team Hard. You know, the Cupra came on the market, there was an opportunity and there was a way in. And he's gone down that route. So that speaks volumes for Scott and what he wants to do, and for the BTCC as well, I think.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. Well, we have got lots to look forward to. I know it's been an up and down couple of months with announcements and all sorts, and you know, understandably, fans being worried. And one thing, it's like a domino effect, isn't it? One thing leads on to the next. But I do feel like we still have got lots to look forward to in BTCC and elsewhere in UK motorsport, because if maybe you're not enjoying the touring cars at the minute, what a great opportunity to go and explore other categories in the UK that you might not have watched yet. Definitely.
Just off the top of my head, I mean, the first thing that came into my mind there as you were speaking was British F4. There's a couple of young racers coming in to the series, which I thought was pretty exciting last year. And there is a son of one of my recent guests who's looking to get into British F4, so that's something to look forward to. But also on other packages, you know, we've said about drivers going to Porsches and down the GT route. I think that's going to fly this year. You know, we got Rob and Ricky Collard, father-son duo in the British GT Championship. That's going to be a terrific series this year, I think. You know, some big names from within motorsport are getting involved with that. So that's something to look out for. And it's just like, you know, there's so much motorsport across the spectrum, you know, to watch here in the UK, even right down to the Briscoe F1 hot rod sort of buggy off-road lunacy that goes on. Absolutely brilliant to watch. So yeah, there's so much to watch, and as you allude to, even if your love of the BTCC is just on the wobble, firstly stick with it, but if you don't want to, then there's plenty of other stuff you can watch, and it's all good.
Yeah, very much so. Well, Rich, thank you so much for coming on the show for a chat. It's like I said, certainly been a very interesting time with lots of ups and downs, lots to talk about, but still lots to look forward to. And I'm sure I'll see you trackside at some point when the weather starts getting a bit sunnier.
Absolutely, we'll get our sunglasses on, and I'm sure we'll catch up at a circuit in the not too distant future for something. Just want to say thanks again for having me on. It's been great to speak with you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. And yeah, see you soon. Thank you very much.
No worries. Take care.